You already know I am super hyped for Need for Speed Unbound, but I do have a slight problem. Maybe playing it down, it's a pretty big problem. Now, don't get me wrong, I am hyped for this game. Like, I cannot wait for it to release. But one of the most important things that's been missing, lacking with recent Need for Speed games is the multiplayer side of things. This is one of the articles that released a little while ago, but I was kind of hoping to get a little bit more information on the multiplayer. But essentially, when you're ready, go online and race with up to 15 other players in parties of up to 4 friends. Hold on a second. 4 friends. This is a problem. 4 people online in a party is not a significant amount. I wouldn't even really complain that much, but the problem is there was more in the previous game. You could have 8 people in a party. Why are we going backwards? If we are dropping previous generation players to say that the reason you can't play is your hardware is not good enough anymore, how can you then reduce the amount of people you could play with? Now, the 15 other players thing, I think that's actually an increase on the previous game, that being Need for Speed Heat. You could only actually see physically 13 people, and officially it was like 12 people. But let's carry on to see who is a real legend of the lake. Here to meet up with your friends and dominate the race playlists. Oh, thank you, Jeebus. Now that is good news. That means we have proper speed lists from the game day one. Has this happened in Need for Speed before? I think it happened in one Need for Speed. Need for Speed 2015 didn't launch with speed lists. That was added in a later update from memory. Need for Speed Payback was the Need for Speed that had speed list day one and no online free roam. Need for Speed had this constant issue with not getting their multiplayer right. With Need for Speed 2015, they really had a good mixture. They added the speed lists later, but that was the first game. Need for Speed Payback, well, that didn't have online free roam until January, when the game launched at the early November. That took too long and killed the multiplayer aspect of that game. Need for Speed Bloody Heat still doesn't have PvP. If you want to play competitively with other people, you have to literally organize it outside of the game. That's just going to kill it in terms of competitive multiplayer. But they did add crossplay. So essentially, this is really bothering me. 4 players from the... That is possibly a big issue for this game, like huge. Think about the fact that if this doesn't get fixed, which they may do so very quickly, this could genuinely just destroy the multiplayer, which would then destroy the post-launch content support, people actually using that. Are we going to get Heat again? Let's be real, I'm over dramatizing essentially the severity of this, but it's really not great. We know that money is separate in multiplayer and single player. It's going to have this split, so I guess kind of maybe like GTA, but not to the extreme. We're not probably going to have these missions and things like that, though maybe. I mean, that would be pretty cool. We know we're going to have proper speed lists, so that is something very exciting indeed from the go for those that are on the competitive side of things. We know in the game there's a new class system, and I definitely hope to see them implement things into the multiplayer in terms of that. Hopefully we get to see with the new addition of SUVs and other types of vehicles being fleshed out. I really want to make sure we see some uses of those different cars in multiplayer. Remember, no wins equals no money equals no car upgrades, means you're staying at the back of the pack. No one wants to stare at tail lights, so challenge your friends and other racers in the server, and who's the rest? Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna get my A game. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna become Mr. Multiplayer Need for Speed man. I'm gonna smash everyone here. Watch me. But as a creator of content with other people, you guys usually get involved in the videos. We do some challenges, we do some events. Because of the new cap of the 4 players, that means I can't invite whole servers to join us and do these fun challenges we normally do. This is something significantly stupid, in my opinion. It's going to limit the amount of people that people can play with, and it for particularly doesn't seem like any reason whatsoever. If you can race with 15, 16 people, then why can we not invite 15, 16 people? Because that'll put it on par, will match it, I believe, with other games similar. In fact, I don't understand why we're going backwards. It's the ultimate thing of it. Now, of course, this is just talking about multiplayer. If you don't care about multiplayer, then it's hardly really an issue for you. But let's be real, when it comes to these type of games, the first thing we do is we play the single player, play through the single player, and depending on how long, currently track record would say that this game is probably not going to be a super long game, but then you jump to the multiplayer, and considering that it's split, any progression I do in single player after doing the multiplayer, kind of getting in tune with the multiplayer and doing speedless, I'm not going to be able to transition any of my cars from a single player to multiplayer. So there really needs to be things we can do in parties and with groups of friends, with random people, and there needs to be a hell of a lot there in multiplayer. To split it so significantly is pretty drastic for the series, because normally you would just bring your cars across, which just made sense. This technically artificially, in my opinion, extends the multiplayer over the single player, but I'm for adding some depth. Maybe there is some real serious stuff in multiplayer. Maybe single player is maybe a bit too easy to make money and multiplayer is a bit more aggressive, or the other way around. Maybe there's just, they've definitely done this for a reason, and I'm just gonna hope that we are going to see a significant amount of new things in the multiplayer itself. Of course, we've not seen the multiplayer, so we can't really comment. I mean, maybe we saw some on the footage in the trailers, but it doesn't look like it. It looks all like we're seeing some single player stuff so far. I don't want to confuse, because I don't want to confuse people in saying that I only want multiplayer here, and that's the game is going to be bad because of multiplayer. I'm still very excited for Need for Speed Unbound, but what I'm a little bit worried about is how long is this going to last, considering the fact that you can only invite a small amount of people, and it seems to be a big focus on speedless, which I am not a competitive multiplayer person. I much prefer the cooperative play, and that's why I think big friend groups make the most sense there. And where the hell are my burnout challenges, Criterion? You invented the damn thing. Where is it? I think it's becoming pretty obvious that the meetup is genuinely just the way to begin events. It's very clear here that you dominate the race playlist. So you start the race playlists from these meetup locations. So what I'm assuming is these meetups are kind of just hubs. I'm guessing these hubs kind of dictate what the type of events are going to be. So there's probably a hub in the city. There's probably a hub in the countryside, the more mountainous roads. There's probably a hub over here. So there might be like 4 or 5, whatever hubs around the map that will basically let us start events from those locations. Now, the thing is, we don't know how the multiplayer is going to work exactly, but considering that the multiplayer seems to be dedicated on speedless, that will at least fix the issue that Need for Speed Heat had, that no one could join an event, or no one would accept invites to an event because the single player and multiplayer was blended. It fixes one problem, but I almost feel like it ruins the other, because the player interaction around the map is not going to be there. Something I've always loved about racing games, like recently, is their idea that your single player and multiplayer kind of blended, and I understand that causes problems, and sometimes maybe it works better not doing that. But what I really enjoy is, say you were going to find a collectible, say you were going to a location that was like a new popular glitch location to go to, you could go there and find a collection of people doing the exact same thing. That non-competitive multiplayer gameplay has possibly been lost in the fact that they're splitting the multiplayer and single player. It may not be, because as I said, most people, once they're done with the single player, are probably going to stick to the multiplayer, but it depends on how they do this. If it's just speed lists and no free roam, there's no sort of other like missions or anything, it may just be speedless, then I think there's a bit of a problem there. We're then obviously taking a bit of a step back from what we had in Need for Speed Heat, which really encouraged you to kind of hang out and introduce and meet and drag race and all these things you can do in the open world. That may be gone, but I may be just talking on my ass. Maybe it's a load of rubbish. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Are you a little bit worried about this multiplayer thing, or are you more of a competitive multiplayer person and you don't really care for the kind of community created idea event thing, or just hanging out? Like, do you not care? Which side are you? Cooperative play or competitive play? Let me know in the comments. Smash like, subscribe, and peace.